Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Abilities Podcast. I am your host, Nick Yerhart, and we are here to encourage each other to find our own unique abilities. Let's go. All right, everyone. So today we have Sean Robinson, and he's going to share some awesome stuff with us. So, Sean, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi Nick. Appreciate you having me here. And my name's Sean. I'm 40 years old, father, husband, three young kids, under 11 years old. And basically, a few years ago, actually a little over 4 years ago, kind of found myself in a downward spiral of sorts as far as my habits and lifestyle was concerned, and just really didn't think that I was the kind of person that could correct the things that I was going through. And while I, made an effort to work through some of those things and get into some better habits, it's been quite a process, and a process that I'm happy to share with anybody that can learn with me.
So, can you give us a couple examples of kind of the negative things that you were struggling with?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, it all surrounded with my relationship with drinking alcohol, and not so much in an effort that you know I felt addicted or I felt like there was a problem. I would definitely learn some tendencies that I maintained, some habits that I had that weren't very healthy, very productive. But in the interim, it was my diet, it was my health, it was my attitude, it was a lot of things that I didn't realize were possibly coming from my relationship with alcohol, and a lot of that was in like overeating, hangovers, different moments where I felt like I had to show up a certain way, and a lot of that was just affecting me in everything that I did. So,
Yeah.
to the end of 2020, that first year of COVID being what it was, I found my habits with drinking, my habits with overeating, with not exercising was just getting worse. We weren't able to go out and do the things we were used to doing, and so we were home more, and I was doing more drinking and more things. And while it wasn't an everyday thing, it was just something that um, held me back in a way. I wasn't as motivated as I could have been and as I am now. So it was all in an effort to just try and be healthier, and I decided starting 2021 that I was gonna start to be healthier, and it just started by taking that break from drinking alcohol, and something that led me to writing a book about the journey of, going dry, was my title of my book. It's, my path to overcoming habitual drinking.
And I can definitely relate to you with drinking and how it negatively affects m- a lot of areas in your life. Even if you may not be, let's say an alcoholic, you might not drink every day. It might just be on the weekends, but it still affects you. And I went through that myself. I was drinking way too much, and then when you drink, you get hungry and you don't make the best food choices and you gain weight, you don't feel good. And then the next day, you're kind of worthless because you don't feel the best. I drink occasionally now, but I definitely notice when I drink, it's like 2 to 3 days afterwards, I still feel the effect of it. You're not as alert, you're tired, just you don't feel right.
Yeah, I don't think I realized the extension of that hangover or that feeling. Even if I didn't feel like I was hungover, there are a lot of residual effects from
Hmm.
that. And I started drinking when I was, I'm from Ontario, Canada, and average drinking age is 19. Quebec north of us is 18. I was drinking before I was legal age, and until I just decided in 2021 to take a break and to be away from it, I really didn't have an extended period of time where I didn't have a few beers with the guys, or a few drinks because it was a Friday, or whatever celebrations. And to have that moment starting 2021, maybe in a few months into it, where I started to really process how I felt compared to different moments. And I don't think I realized how far that hangover could extend, the days
Yeah.
later. It's not always that stomach feeling, or you eat the greasy meal and you're feeling better. It's the attitude that I would have, the impatience, the motivation, lack of it, and all the things that substance, alcohol, does to us. I don't think I never would have realized if I didn't give myself a chance to have a period without it.
Yeah, exactly. And same here. Once uh, it was like I went like a month without, and I was like, wow, like th- this is how you're supposed to feel. So now, it's rare that I drink, but I like to have a cocktail or a wine here and there. But yeah, it's amazing how good you can feel. And then it sounds like you went deeper and you started eating healthier also.
Yeah, so when I started, I was 320 pounds, and yeah, just miserable physically, mentally. I said I had young kids. They were much younger then. I just didn't have any energy. I didn't want to be down on the floor. Like I'd get home from work and I'd be tired and I'd come up with every excuse not to get involved. And I wasn't distant, father, but it was just like I'd play for a few minutes and I'd be like, okay, that's good. So I just felt like that was enough. When I started 2021, it was, I'm just going to do a dry January. I'm going to have this resolution, whatever it was, to just take a break from drinking. And it was all in an effort to start eating better. And, all of the benefits of not having alcohol, but it was like I wasn't staying up as late. So I wasn't, having pizza at 2 in the morning. And then, all the chips and everything that came with, a night out. And then, the kids were young, so I was getting up in the mornings anyways. So, I was able to go outside with them more and start, either pushing them in the stroller or having them on their bikes and, really being more present in that aspect, but then also going for those walks and then those runs and, challenging myself to start working harder on my physical fitness and pay more attention to the other things that I'm eating and the diet. I got to a point where I was down 100 pounds. And while I've put
Wow,
probably 15 of that
that's
back
awesome.
on, um, it's really just a winter weight, a Christmas weight that I'm calling it. And,
Yep.
by the spring, I'll be back in line with where I was. So um, it's not to say that I've come back. It's just, I think a natural thing, like for me to lose 100 pounds from 320 that I was at, there's bound to be a little bit of that come back. And
Yeah. And
it's,
I think that's okay. Like I know I started my health journey 2 years ago. Well, exactly 2 years ago. And this last holiday season, well, I kind of gave it up for a month, and I'm feeling it now. So
Mhm.
now I'm currently doing the carnivore diet for 30 days. So I've done a lot of research into it, and I guess it's a great way to lose the excess fat really quick.
Mhm.
So we're doing that, and we're working out, and yeah, I I'm only on my 7 days in, so 1 week in, and I already feel so much better. No sugars, nothing, just meat and salt and
Excellent.
eggs.
Yeah, great.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah, it's
important to, I found it's important to, what, like have that celebration, have that birthday cake, do that thing. But then, that doesn't mean we lose all of our progress, right? That doesn't mean that we're I'm not going to go back to that 320-pound person because I know how I felt and I know how important it was. But does that mean that I have to stick to some, version of a diet or to never eat again? That's not what we need to do. And that's not where we find success. You've recognized, I've recognized, we get through the holidays, we got to do whatever to get back on track. And then, that's important because, if we don't let ourselves have those moments, then we'll no diet. It doesn't matter what it is, it won't work.
yep. And I don't even like to say diet. Like I said, diet with the carnivore diet because that's what it's called,
Mhm.
and it's not something that I plan on doing forever. So when I look at my healthy eating style, that's what I call it.
Mhm.
It's my healthy eating lifestyle that I do now. And like you said, it's okay to have, the not so good food here and there, but just not all the time.
Yeah, like I said, it's a lifestyle. As soon as
Hmm.
we know that, I want to be a healthy person, or I identify as a healthy person, that lifestyle is we're gonna make healthier decisions. yes, I agree. The diet thing, it does seem so temporary, and I don't believe there's any of them that are, designed to be forever. But the permanent diet, whatever version of it is to the individual, it's very hard to sustain. It's not as as easy as, say, just you're changing that lifestyle, making your decisions just a part of what you would do normally.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then, like, what are you up to these days because of that?
Um, a lot of this journey that I've been on was in an effort to challenge, and I never really realized it until I got into it, but it was a challenge who I thought I had to be before. I always told myself this is just who I am. I'm overweight, I'm a drinker, I'm just miserable, whatever it is. This is just who I am, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. But by allowing myself to show up to functions and not drink, or to like, I started running in some long distance, did some long distance running, and that was never something that I would have signed up for. There was a lot of that environment that just wasn't for me. And, it's very easy for me to tell myself that, oh, that's just not for me. Well, why is it not for me? Well, it's not because I've never done it before. Okay, but I've never done it before. That doesn't mean it's not something I could try. And a lot of the process to getting around the fact that just because I haven't done something before doesn't mean I might not be good at it or I might not enjoy it, right? Like running, or like reading, or whatever. So since I started to not drink, and since I started to really see how that benefited me, I'm still not drinking, but I started to write about it. I started to journal about it. And, um, in the beginning, when I was confused and unsure, and 320 pounds and miserable, that journal was really just a place for me to beat myself up. Right. It was just a place to get the thoughts down. I didn't feel like people wanted to hear anymore, or that maybe my
Yeah.
wife was kind of, not tired of hearing, because she's been great, but just she didn't know how to help, right? Like, people, we
Uh-huh.
don't know how to
Yeah.
help. So that journal became a place where I went from, that outlet, to still using it as an outlet, but using it more as a tool, and then the tool that it is designed to kind of be for us. So,
Mhm.
I maintained that journal. I wrote down things that worked, things that maybe didn't work or I didn't like, and just a place for me to come back to later. Being able to do that, I've been able to grow a lot with, like I said, not drinking, and eating healthier, an exercise routine, training for marathons. I did 2 half marathons last year, and I think I've done
That's awesome.
3 or 4 now, a couple more planned for 2025. And, to go from someone that didn't think they could go and run because all of the spotlight effect, and, feeling like everybody's watching me and everybody's judging me because of how I do it, or, how I show up compared to someone else. Just getting over the fact that nobody's watching me. Nobody, you could go and run an event with a couple thousand people and no one remembers you're there, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
the kind of thing that I couldn't wrap my head around before, because just feel like in an environment you don't belong. So a lot of now is testing myself and continuing to show up, and try those things, and just be a person that is more interested in that progression than someone like I used to be, that just didn't do things because this isn't who I am or who I thought I was.
Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like we all are really quick to identify as something, you know, I'm not a runner. I'm not healthy, things like that. And it's the moment where you can break that habit, where your life can really change. I mean, like, once you just stop and say, okay, how could I do that? You know? So that's where everything changes. And another thing that you talked about is journaling. Journaling is so important. It's so helpful. It's a form of therapy. That's for sure. I journal every morning, and it's really changed my life and opened me up and helped me understand myself so much more.
Yeah, it does that, because, like, there's a lot of times we forget how we're feeling in a moment, or what's going through our heads. And we have a lot of great ideas, we have a lot of great thoughts, and we have a lot of not great thoughts. And they both have a place, and they both have a lot to do with our growth. And organizing those thoughts, writing them down, seeing the words. And maybe we don't really feel that way when we start to see it written down, like, wow, that's not like, that's a weird thought to have. Like, "Oh, I don't really feel that way." And you can kind of catch yourself. Then you can reframe that thought, right? You can either get rid of that and say, no, that's not what I believe. And you can start to write something else. You can start to think something else. If we don't have a place to catch those thoughts, or to document those thoughts, or to learn from those, there's a lot of things that go through our minds that gets completely wasted. Right. And it's not to say that you have to go from, and I think this is a lot of problem with changing habits, and, going from one mental, fixed mindset to a growth mindset sort of scenario is, we think about going 0 to 60 or 0 to 100. We have to journal every day, or it won't work, or we have to run 100 miles a day, or it won't work. And it's thinking about things in such a grandiose aspect, such a huge thing that will prevent us from doing anything. Right.
Exactly.
So if we start by journaling once a week, we start by, walking, or we start by doing something extremely small, then we naturally will want to grow that. We'll start to go from, say, journaling once a week to twice to 3 times a week, or we'll start to go by, going for a walk down the driveway. And then all of a sudden we're, a couple months later, we're training for a half marathon. That was kind of the way it worked for me. And it's just a matter of keeping things small enough that we're going to do it, and then building on it once we're comfortable with it. Or, like for me right now, while I've maintained a lot of growth since the end of 2020, I still keep small goals. I still have, a moment where maybe I'm only doing 5 squats a day, because life's busy. I've got the kids are in rep sports, and I've got, everybody's busy doing things and demands at work. And, if I don't keep a small goal, there's a really good chance I'm not going to do it. Right. There's a
Mhm.
good chance that even with the growth I have, because we're all human, I'm human, I may not be able to do 100 sit-ups or walk for 4 kilometers or five, a couple miles. It's if those 5 squats are all I have to do today to call today a win, I can fit
Mhm.
that in at any point, even if it's right before bed, right? And if five
And
squats becomes 100, because that's what I can do today, I win with five, but I'm
yeah,
I'm gaining because of that extra I could do.
and I like how you're saying that because you're calling it a win. One thing that I'm big on is celebrate your wins, no matter how small. Celebrate them. At the end of every day, look back, be like, I accomplished that. That's a win. Let's go. Just
Yeah.
have that little celebration for yourself because that's gonna give you momentum and motivation to keep going.
Yeah, we absolutely. And you know what? That celebration for me was hard to figure it out at first, because it's one thing to say, celebrate that win. Okay, but what does that look like? Is that like celebrate, have a chocolate cake? Is that celebrate by, if it's, you're not drinking, what does that celebration look like? And, I think, like everything else, I overthought even that part of it, and that celebration doesn't have to be anything more than you want it to be, right? What works for you that will keep you going? If that celebration is simply just a check mark on the calendar because you were able to do one more day of whatever it is, or maybe that celebration is just throwing that sweaty shirt in the wash, right? Because you got that workout in. Like, it doesn't have to be a purchase or a consumption of an item to really get the celebration and the win, right? Like, you have to kind of define what that means to you for whatever it is you're working on.
Exactly. I agree. And what what would you like to promote to the audience? Your book?
Yeah, I think other than just focusing on their own wellness and giving themselves a chance, I've put a lot of content out, my TikTok, my website, and I wrote that book. It's called Going Dry: My Path to Overcoming Habitual Drinking. It's 120 pages, small. I wasn't a big reader before, so for me to get into reading, I've read tons now and listen to many podcasts and audiobooks, but I wanted to keep it small, something that someone like my old self would want to pick up and read. And it really outlines the journey that I had from going from that place of victim mindset, fixed mindset, this is just who I am, to a place of being more growth, more open-minded. And it's from my journaling. It's from the notes that I took through a year of taking that break from, and like, I'm not drinking now, but the book is based on that year of my life where I went from a dry January thought to what if I could do this for an entire year. So yeah, any support, if that's something that's useful. I
Yeah,
had
definitely.
I had drinking as my kinda main item, but it really could be anything. It's the process is the same for someone that, is has an issue with sugar or has an issue with whatever. It's either a plus and minus of a thing that is holding you back from maybe that, identity, that mindset that would be more productive for you.
Yep. And then, what was your book called again?
It's called Going Dry: My Path to Overcoming Habitual Drinking.
Alright, and then, where can you find it?
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's available at most bookstores, Barnes and Noble, Chapters Indigo in Canada. It's probably not on in stock, but it's definitely available online. But
Awesome, and
through,
yep,
through my website. My website's tied to Amazon, but there's a contact me section there. If someone's interested, I've got lots of copies I can send. So seanrobinson.ca. It says lots of good content there, including access to the book.
awesome, and I like that you talked about how you kept it short, 120, pages, because I wrote a little book, it's called E Empowering Motivational Strategies, and it's 46, pages. I just wanted something that people could take with them. It's little, and just open up any page to find motivation for whatever they're going through.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah, I like that you did that.
that's great. That's good work. And yeah, it is. It's easy, right? Like you want something like that. I wanted something to that was easy because it told the story that I was going through that I wanted to tell. You set that up that it's giving people what they need, but it's not 700 pages, 800 pages, 1,000 pages. Like, I read Atomic Habits. It's one of my favorite books.
Oh, good.
I would have never picked that up 5 years ago because it's quite big. It's quite a large book, and it didn't matter how much I wanted to read it. I wouldn't have done it 5 years ago. I've read it twice now. But, so for me, everything I do is for that person I used to be. And if I wasn't going to pick up a 700-page book, I didn't need to include a ton of extra content just for the sake of adding content. I wanted to keep it straightforward. I wanted to keep it to the point. I wanted to show the series of emotions I went through, the struggles I went through. I was in a wedding, and my friend asked me to be in his wedding, and he kept telling me, "You better drink at my wedding." And there was a lot of circles that would just expected me to continue to show up a certain way, and there's a lot of emotion
Yep,
in there. And I didn't need to do that over 700 pages. I wanted to keep it in a place where I would have been interested in reading it, because that was the content I could have used when I got started on the journey, and felt like, because I come from a lifetime of working construction and being a volunteer firefighter, and all these dominant masculine spaces, that I didn't feel like I could work on these things. I didn't feel like I could show up differently than I was used to. And, it was important to be able to do that and to show that, but also do it in a way that I would have read it before.
yep, yep. Awesome, so awesome, and, thank you for doing that, because that's huge. It's because you're helping people, and that's what this is all about. And speaking of that, my slogan is "Your abilities are infinite." What does that mean to you?
Um, your abilities are infinite. It means to me that there isn't an end to what you can do and what you can achieve. I think no matter where our background is, no matter what we can do physically, mentally, it's infinite, because there's always going to be something that we can do. There's always going to be a benefit that we can give. There's always going to be, um, there's always going to be something, no matter what our situation, that will help us and will help the people around us.
Exactly, I agree. And then what are some last words of wisdom that you would like to share?
Um, my biggest lessons would be, as far as habits go, we have to start small. We have to find something that, like I said, my small win of those 5 squats or whatever that is. It has to be something that we can achieve, and we have to do it consistently, right? If we can achieve it and we can do it consistently, we can find success in it. And that is true with anything I worked on, from physical fitness to running, from to not drinking to fixing my diet. It was do something that I can do every day and do it every day. And along with that, I document it on my calendar, right? Physically have this calendar, and I have check marks, I have circles, I have squiggly lines and squares and boxes and whatever it is. Everything means something else. And I circle and make these marks every day for something different. If I'm doing something physical, if I'm reading, if I'm drinking more water, if I'm brushing my teeth, whatever it is I'm working on, I have these marks on this calendar. And every single day I get to celebrate by marking that off, by checking that box, by doing that thing. And, that consistency is where we win. That consistency is where we see results. And just one more thing on that, like, we have to give ourselves credit. We have to give ourselves a chance to succeed. And we may not see results in, a few days. And we have to be mentally ready for that. The biggest thing I learned was the 3 months. If you can do something for 3 months, consistently, you will see results, and those results will carry you through.
Yep, I agree with all that. And one thing when it comes to habits that has worked for me, I actually learned it from M- Mel Robbins. It's called habit stacking. So add a new habit to an old habit that you already do. Like if you are brushing your teeth, everybody I hope does that, at least once a day. And when you do that, you could add in, say my affirmations right after I do that, and that just makes building that habit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much benefit and so much power in doing that, right? You're taking something you're doing anyways, and because you're doing it anyways, it's easy to start adding that other thing to it. That's a
Yep.
good point.
Yep. All right, Sean, this was really good, great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and you're doing great things, Nick, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this show, please go ahead and share it on your Instagram story and tag me in it, the Nick Yerhart. Also, go ahead and share it anywhere else that you see fit, because the only way that I can grow this is by you guys sharing it. I don't sell anything on here. I don't have any sponsors, so let's just get it out there by word of mouth and help more people. Alright, everyone, remember your abilities are infinite. This episode of the Infinite Abilities Podcast is brought to you by the one and only Infinite Toolbox, where just like all other toolboxes, we will get the job done, guaranteed. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking to save time, boost revenue, or automate your processes, Infinite Toolbox has got you covered. With powerful tools designed to drive leads, expand your reach, and gain your industry secrets, we help you work smarter, not harder. Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Visit us at infinitetoolbox.com. That's infinitetoolbox.com, and discover how infinite your potential really is.